That would be me.
Look who we're hanging with.
Jason David Frank.
Boom shakalaka.
Please do not change channel.
Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hangin' with Web Show. I'm GW Pomichter. If you haven't done it yet, go down and hit subscribe. Come back over and over. We've got authors, artists, musicians, filmmakers, a few homeless guys I saw outside. Anybody artistic will sit in the chair. We love hanging with great creative artists. We're here at Tampa Bay Comic-Con 2018 at the Tampa Bay Convention Center, and we're hanging with author John Wilkerson. John, thanks for hanging with us, man.
Hey, Garrett. Glad to run into you here.
Yeah,
I hope you're having a good day.
Oh, we are having a great time.
Good.
How's the con going for you?
Wonderful. Got here early, but still didn't make the parking garage.
Still didn't make the
Still didn't make the parking
like
garage.
4 parking garages, the closest ones were
Yep.
filled by the time we got here this morning to set up.
Yeah, but at least the car is pointed out.
There you go. There you go. John is the author of Rye Ironstone, of the Rye Ironstone series.
Correct.
Okay. Well, tell us how long you've been writing, John.
I've written professionally pretty much my whole career.
Okay.
Advertising copy, and got into website writing in the 90s. Advertising layout. I have a background in printing as well.
Fantastic.
And have always wanted to write the novel. Wanted to do it for a living. Wanted to do it just for the fun of it. And I had a student of mine, I teach martial arts as well, and I had a student of mine that finished his first novel at 17, and he shamed me into doing it. He walked in and he goes, "Mr. Wilkerson, would you buy my novel and read it?" Absolutely.
It is.
I went home that night and started.
That's fantastic.
So,
that's a great story.
Yeah.
You know, that's a story for guys our age
Right.
anyway, because I know when we started the show, I went to school for journalism, I went to work for the newspaper,
Right.
and I always wanted to do my own thing.
Right.
And I thought, I don't know, there's so much involved, and I started watching these kids run around with
Right.
their phones and do everything on the internet, and the arts and entertainment paradigm has shifted so much from what we grew up on that it was actually possible. And you saw these kids, we got to lead by example. We got to get out in front of this.
We have
right?
to do it. And yeah, and we're in that cusp generation that we grew up as it started.
Yep.
You know, I remember programming BASIC in school and have done the whole thing and learned Microsoft before it was Windows. And so we've grown up with the technology from the founding and we understand it, but we never learned how to leverage it.
That's right.
And I'm finding that's the biggest difference now in my 50s in writing is there's a whole world of support out there on the technology side and the individuals that understand this.
You have access to
I've had to
readers
learn
that
it.
you didn't have before. You have access to readers and fans, to publishing assets,
Yes.
help with editing, cover designers, all at your fingertips.
Yeah.
You know, the communication power that's in your cell phone
Right.
today. You know, can you imagine when we were in high school trying to, be able to communicate with people around the globe instantaneously?
Yeah, you sit in your bedroom at night with the cord pulled in, with the telephone, or am I going to call that girl? Am I going to call that girl? Because you never know who's going to pick up the phone. Is it going to be the mother, the father? You didn't ever call after 6 o'clock because you knew the dad was going to pick up the phone and you didn't want to have to do that.
You never had anything good to say to you
The
right
cell
away.
phone has added a wonderful level of anonymity.
It really has. All right, so let's talk about Rye Ironstone. Okay.
I grew up reading the adventure novels from the 60s and 70s. I'm an old The Destroyer fan. Remo Williams and Shun, you might know it as the movie that came out in the 80s. I enjoyed those. They were very campy, and I got to looking at the market, and I decided I was going to bring back the hero and the anti-hero hero.
The great, those are the great, the kids from the 90s and the millennials will know them as sort of the pulp fiction heroes.
The pulp fiction heroes, and that is how I initially defined the character. And he's not pulp fiction, but there's a little bit of noir mixed in there. And he's a young man in his early to mid 20s, and the original book, first book, he takes a job in the Appalachian University, which happens to be the home base for a secret government organization that investigates the obscure and strange. And when he's been on the job site for about a month or two, all of a sudden the campus falls down. Major earthquake, lightning strikes. He doesn't know what happens. He's locked in the basement of the library when this happens. And he crawls his way out and decides, I'm going to figure out what happens. And it turns out that there's a church group. You got to throw the church group in there to get the first book going. And they have found Nikola Tesla's long-lost death ray. And if you're a fan of Nikola Tesla, if you're a fan of Tesla, you realize Tesla had no children. Well, the title of the book is Mother Tesla's Death Ray. He actually had a child and a grandchild, and they run the church. They have the death ray, and they're blowing up the town and the countryside one building at a time.
Wow.
And he and his new partner, who is a 60-something-year-old lady Zen master, who has been assigned to him by the government organization, starts teaching him how to tap into his special skills.
Wow, man, that's awesome.
And so it's that old adventure trope turned into the modern kind of a paranormal environment.
It sort of sounds like a detective story with a
detective
little Flash
story,
Gordon.
a little Flash Gordon.
You know,
Flash Gordon's a good way to say it.
You know, it is. But, you know, there was a time when creativity knew no bounds.
Right.
And sometimes today we get locked in a box.
Yep.
You write, I write noir. You write sort of a Pulp Fiction character. You know, we write these characters, and everybody wants to chuck us into this box.
Right.
But in the 50s and 60s, in those early days of experimentation, they came up with some wild stuff, man.
There was no definition of the tropes.
That's right. And so we now, it's always fun for us to go in and take those boxes that we're in and bust the walls out of them again and show everybody it can be big and grand and fun, and the research is there. Working in a universe where you've got Nikola Tesla's notebooks as fodder is awesome.
Oh, it goes one better. They find his lab.
Awesome.
That's the whole whole interest of the book, is that every book in the series deals with a historical importance.
That's
and
fantastic.
we put a twist to it. The first one deals with
what was
Tesla.
What was the most interesting thing you learned when you were doing your research for this particular?
For Tesla?
Yeah.
It was the fact that he was so insane and so brilliant,
which
typically goes hand in hand. And the quote was it by Edison made the quote, "If you want to meet the smartest man in the world, go meet Tesla." And that's paraphrasing whatever it came down to. And it really put it into perspective. And I have family that lives out in Colorado Springs.
Oh, wow.
And the Colorado area still talks about when he did his experiments out there and would blow out the power grid. And so I got to learn the nuances of what was happening. And that's one of the great part about writing, especially with the fiction side, is you have to learn enough to make the story work, but you don't have to stick with it.
Well, you picked it. You're in a good time too. Tesla's actually been a recent subject of a lot of studies, because so much of what we know about Tesla is we're learning more every day about his notebooks, some of his inventions. It's sort of we didn't have to wait 400 years like we did with Da Vinci to find out about his stuff. We're learning it now. And we just in fact watched a great documentary on Tesla about the hotel that he lived in as he got older in New York. And the fact that it was on its own, it was its own power grid, its own power station in the hotel. And they say that that was probably why he chose it, because he kept blacking out Colorado Springs, and even though he was getting older, he wanted to continue to work, but he didn't want to black out the whole city to do it. And get in trouble, because by then he was being watched by everybody in the corporate America too. So,
and you talk about the learning aspect, that the book came out of watching, I believe it was the American Experience, the television program. They had a special on Tesla a number of years ago, and I watched it one evening. I said, there is a story here. And we just need to find what the story was. And when I started the book, it was serious science fiction, and that lasted for about 2 chapters, and I rewrote them, and then I did it again and rewrote them. And
I love that, because
all of a sudden, here comes this campy character.
Awesome.
And he's here.
I love that. You know, if you ask a sculptor how they find, how they sculpt something, they always tell you it's in the stone. It's there. I'm just uncovering it a piece at a time. And I think a writer is not very different than that.
No.
We pick a subject matter, we start doing research, we start looking into things. The stories are in there. We just peel away the layers until you find a great character, like Rye Ironstone. And you find this great over-the-top character, and build a story. And you have a series. This is a series now.
I do. The second one's out, the third one's being written, and the fourth one's an outline. The second one deals, the books all take place in the late 1980s.
Okay.
Which is a great political time to talk about it. Or to
You know,
talk
it's-
about the fact of all the weird can happen.
And the only thing wrong with a book written in that era is there's no sound, so you can't hear the soundtrack.
Yep.
You had the best music of any generation.
Well, you say that, but the book actually has a soundtrack. Rye lives his life according to music, and every few chapters, music plays, he hears it or something,
and
it's a premonition of what's coming in the chapter. And if you pay attention to the music, you get an idea of where the chapter is going to go.
And there it is. And
so I did that so that when the movie comes out, they already have the soundtrack.
That's right. Holly, call. He's by the phone right now. All right, guys, we have to wrap it up. We've been hanging out with John Wilkerson, the author of the Rye Ironstone series. Before we go, we're going to say thank you to our partners and our friends at Embellish Effects Orlando, Pound the Grape in Melbourne, Off the Chain Radio with author Yvonne Mason, Space Coast Comics, Something Unique Magazine, and Famous Faces and Funnies was one of our very first supporters. We're so grateful for them for sponsoring the show, for helping us to bring these great creative minds to you. Subscribe, come back over and over again. Remember, everybody, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
I appreciate
Awesome.
it.